the chat box, and then go ahead with your questions, and we could either stop if it's important, like we want to get it right away, or at the end, maybe we can save those questions and maybe discuss as a group. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say I will try to follow up in the chat, but then we will go back to those questions so everyone can hear the answers.
Okay, so I cannot see you anymore, but hopefully you can see my screen. So DRS stands for Division of Rehabilitation Services, and we use the term, everybody refers to them as DRS. They used to be the Department of Rehabilitation Services in the past, and people would refer to that as DORS. And some people that have worked with DRS for a long time still call them DORS, which is fine. It's often used. So we just want to give you a breakdown of our team. We are district-wide, so we work with all of the city of Chicago. It's myself and Kyle, who are the transition specialists. We consider ourselves DRS liaisons because we're kind of like that party in between CPS and DRS, okay? And then we also have Lily. She's not here with us, but she's our grant assistant. So she helps a ton with all the referrals that we get. Again, we work with all the 160 plus schools in the city. So it can be overwhelming just keeping track of who is where and who's receiving services, but we try to do our best. So Division of Rehabilitation Services is the state of Illinois lead adult agency serving people with disabilities. And this includes students in high school who have an IEP or a 504 plan. So what DRS does is they assist people with disabilities by making informed choices so they can participate in the community through employment, education, and independent living. So we'll talk more about the services specifically that DRS can provide. So when I say adult agency, DRS does not fall under the category under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. So their services start for adults, so after high school. And we'll explain why we have a collaboration with them and why it's important to get connected while a student is in high school early on. So DRS is one of 5 divisions under the Illinois Department of Human Services. So there's 5: mental health, developmental disabilities, substance abuse, family and community services, and then lastly, rehabilitation services. So that's DRS. They provide vocational rehabilitation to people with disabilities to prepare them to obtain, maintain, and advance in employment. So that's essentially their job. Their job is to provide assistance to people with disabilities, and this is people with an array of disabilities. So I always tell my students, if I were to, God forbid, get into an accident, and I no longer have use of my left arm, let's just say, I can go to DRS services to ask for assistance so I can maintain my job. Or, there's a lot of acquired disabilities that people get throughout their life. And anybody can use vocational rehabilitation. In fact, vocational rehabilitation started after World War II, when a lot of the vets were coming, back home injured and whatnot, and they needed to get back into the workforce. So that's how it started. And then it moved from there to, work with people with any kind of disability. So it is a federally funded program, and it is authorized by Title I of the Rehab Act of 1973. That means this is law. It's federally mandated. Every state has to have vocational rehabilitation services. So if you live in Illinois, it is administered by the Department of Human Services, and it is referred to as Division of Rehab Services. If you move to another state, they may call it differently, but it's the same thing. Each state receives federal funding, money from the federal government to provide services. This law was reauthorized by the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, also known as WIOA, in 2014. So in 2014, WIOA now requires that each state reserves 15% of their funding for what's called pre-employment transition services for youth with disabilities as they transition out of high school. So one of the things that vocational rehabilitation noticed nationwide is that students who receive special education in high school, once they graduate, a lot of times they're not ready for employment. A lot of times they're not ready for college or what happens after high school. So there's this push for collaboration between school districts and DRS to provide this pre-employment transition services. And when we think of pre-employment, it's anything that happens before you get a job, right? How to look for a job, how to get your resume together, how to go to an interview, what to wear, what to do. I mean, a lot of times we even have to work with our students on like shaking hands and maintaining eye contact, because these are things that they're not necessarily taught in school. You know, in school, they're focusing on the academics. They're not focusing on, you know, employment per se. But a lot of our students that leave high school, they want to get a job. And it's hard to get a job, period, for anybody, let alone for young people without work experience. And then on top of that, you're adding perhaps a learning disability or concentration difficulties, reading difficulties. So it's important to get connected to services early on. In Illinois, transition services begin at 14 and a half. So at 14 and a half, that's when we need to start thinking about what's going to happen after high school. So why do we want to connect students to DRS? So DRS provides a lot of services. We want to focus on these three main services they provide because I feel that they apply specifically to transition age students with disabilities. So they provide job placement services. So like I said before, career exploration. A lot of times our young students, they don't really know what they want to do. Or if they do, they may not have, it's based on like what they watch on TV, right? They want to be a cop. They want to be an NBA player. They want to be, be an NFL player. So we want to make sure that they have career exploration activities so they can establish employment goals that are realistic and attainable. That's what we want. We want them to be successful. We don't want to set them up for failure and for something that is not going to be achievable. So also resume development, interview preparation, job readiness training, job search assistance, and then DRS also has a lot of employer connections. So these are services for those students who want to get a job or want to learn to get a job. I always tell students, getting a job is a job on its own. And the skills that you need to get a job, if you can have somebody to help you how to look for a job, you're going to have that skill and you're going to use it for the rest of your life. And any of us, if we lose our jobs, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to update my resume. I'm going to prepare for that job interview, right? I'm going to be looking for jobs and then, looking into my my social circle to see if there's any kind of employer connections for me. Another service that they provide is college financial support. So they consider college or any kind of post-secondary education as training, because essentially, students that go to college, they do so to obtain a degree, certification, licensure, to work in a particular career field to get that job that they want. So as long as that student has a realistic job goal or employment goal that requires them to go to college. So if they want to be a nurse assistant, a teacher, a doctor, and anything really that requires college, DRS is able to provide funding for tuition, for books, fees, supplies. And this is for community college, four-year college or university, a vocational training program, a technical program, like if they want to go into cosmetology or trade. We have a lot of students that, maybe academically they're not up to par, but they still want to work and maybe like to work with their hands. So they would rather go into be an electrician or a carpenter. So they also assist with that. And then they also have something called supported employment, or SEP. Supported employment is assistance from a job coach designed for students with significant disabilities who will need ongoing support on their job. So we also have students who they have that desire to work, but they may need a little bit more support. So DRS is able to pay for a job coach. I believe it's up to 24 months. So the services, the job coach goes with the student, or when DRS World is, it's a customer, with the customer to their employment, and the job coach helps that student, making sure that they do what they need to do and not taking time away from maybe another worker or a supervisor. And the services are designed to be, they start off maybe 3 times a week, but it weans off. So it's the purpose is that student learns their job and gets the support, but it's something that will be less and less each time, because we obviously want that customer, the young person, to be able to work independently. So the first step in referring students to DRS is completing this packet. So we have, the CPS team, we manage all the referrals. So all the referrals come through our office. We process the referrals and submit them to DRS, make sure that they have all the information from the students, including their IEP, psych evaluation, any medical reports that we find, or the 504 plan if that's what they have. So we recently have this available electronically. Before COVID, this was a paper referral. So parents would get the paper referral at school, and then they would fill it out and then return it to the case manager, and then the case manager would get it to us. Now, because of COVID, we have this available via DocuSign, and it's available electronically. So it's easy, a lot easier than before, because essentially parents or the student gets that link, clicks, and then they can complete it. So we want students to complete this packet as early as they can. The latest we want them done by the 5th of June of their junior year. So 1 whole year before they graduate, just because, we want to allow enough time for that student to be able to meet with their DRS counselor, and they can work their case and do all the steps. A lot of times we get a lot of referrals during senior year, and there's so much happening during senior year that DRS is just one more thing that the student has to do on top of, maybe applying for college or financial aid or just senioritis, right? They're done with school by their 2nd semester of senior year. So DRS is like, it goes in 1 year, out the other. So we want to make sure that they make a connection with a DRS counselor, that they understand the services, and then most importantly, that they understand what's going to happen after they graduate. So we have this deadline, if you will, June 5th, usually the first Friday in June of their junior year, we want to have this. This year, that deadline was extended up until tomorrow, actually, Friday, because it took us so long to get this packet available electronically that we just kept moving and moving and moving. However, if this is the first time you hear about this and you're like, I didn't know about this DRS and I want to get my student, I don't know if I'll be able to get it done tomorrow. We're going to have our email at the end of the presentation, and we can give you more time if you need to. Okay, so we'll work with you. If for any reason students miss the deadline, or maybe they're not interested, we do meet a lot of students who say, nope, I don't need that. I don't need DRS. I'm fine. I can do it on my own, which is fine. It's just a voluntary program. We like to offer the services, but again, it is up to you whether you want to take advantage. But, in case a student in the beginning says no, but then later on changes their mind and it's past the June 5th of their junior year, they can still be referred to DRS. They would be referred directly to DRS, not through our team. They just have to wait until a few weeks before they graduate, 45 days prior to their graduation or the day that they exit, to then make a referral. DRS also requires that students provide their Social Security number. As we said earlier, they do receive federal funding. So this Unfortunately, this service is only for students who are citizens and they have a valid social security number. And the only thing they do with the social is they just want to verify that the student's name, that their date of birth and their social security number matches. When you enter the social security number, only Kyle, Lily, and I have access to that social. And once it's entered into the system, we don't keep anything. Everything gets shredded, everything gets deleted. So we don't have space in our office or anywhere to maintain that information. And it's everything is password protected. So, you know, we understand that this is very sensible or sensitive information, and we just want to let you know and ensure that we practice confidentiality and privacy, and, you know, make sure that none of that is divulged. So we want to make sure that parents and students understand which referral packet to use. So with the new referral process with DocuSign, the electronic version, we had to make a DRS referral packet for a parent version and an adult student version. In our paper one, it was easier because if a student is under the age of 18, so they're not adults yet, or the parents have legal guardianship of them, then it's a parent that has to complete this and sign. For students who are already 18 or older and they are their own legal guardian, then the student can sign, which is why we have two versions of the packet. So we just want to ensure that if your child is, or the student is, again, under the age of 18 and parents have the legal guardianship, they have to complete the parent version. If the student is already 18 and they're, you know, an adult and their own legal guardian, nobody has guardianship of them, then they can do the adult student version. So one of the versions, only the parent can sign, even though there's a consent that will say student signature required, the system will not even allow you to click and sign. Only parents have to sign. So we just want to make sure, you know, make that distinction, because we've gotten a few packets for students that are not 18 and they're completing the parent version. So then we have to email them and say, hey, have your parent complete this one. Also, there's an access code. We just want to highlight this briefly. There is an access code when you click into the link, and I think sometimes it doesn't tell you where that access code is coming from, but the access code will come in the email. So you have to go back to your inbox and look for an email with that access code, copy and paste it to enter. So a lot of times, again, this is not stated when you enter your name and your address. So a lot of parents will email us and say, you didn't give me the access code, without realizing that it's in their inbox. So really quickly, the referral process. We need the case manager, teacher, the schools to identify those students who may benefit from DRS services. They can go to the ODLSS transition website. This is where we have those links for the DRS referral packets, the electronic ones, and DocuSign. The school case manager, teacher should email the parent or the adult student that link. When the student or the parent receives that, they have to click on that link, enter their full name and their email address, go back to look for that access code in their inbox, copy and paste it, and then resume signing. And then just go from there. It's very easy. Once they enter the name, it's automatically filled out. So then you just go through the process. It literally takes like no more than 5 minutes, I would say. It's a very easy process, a lot easier than when we were doing the paper referral. And then this is just what happens, right? Because a lot of times, you know, the schools will send that link or give them the packet, and they're like, we don't know what happened after that. So this is how things go. So the DRS referral packet is submitted. We get the packet, Kyle, Lily, myself, and we process it. We send it over to DRS. So step number 2, case assignment. The DRS counselor is assigned. We have 8 offices in the city of Chicago. Each office has a designated vocational rehab counselor or DRS counselor to work with a number of schools in their area. Once they receive those assigned cases, they have 30 days to schedule an intake interview. So typically, before COVID, the DRS counselors would go to the school and meet with the students there to complete this intake interview. Now, during COVID times, they are doing like virtual intake interviews, so over the phone or Zoom. So DRS counselor meets with the student, gathers information, gets to know them, because all this information then is gathered for step number 4, which is the eligibility determination. So for DRS, eligibility has to be established. So the students have to meet the criteria to be eligible. If they have an IEP or 504 plan, they will be eligible for services. And then the DRS counselor will review the intake interview information, any school documents that we provide, including the IEP or 504 plan, to determine the student's eligibility. After that, the student is found eligible, then they start developing what's called the IPE, which is very similar to IEP, and a lot of people get confused. I get confused all the time, but it's the Individualized Plan for Employment, IPE. So in school, those students that have their IEP, that's their educational plan, right? IEP, education plan. IPE is their employment plan. So if you think about it, it's a transition from education to employment, which is what we want. So the IPE is developed between the student and the counselor. It includes that employment goal. Remember what I was talking to you earlier, right? We want our young people to have an idea of what they want to do, right? Because the IPE will state the employment goal and how and what services DRS will provide. So we want to ensure that students have done the career exploration in high school necessary to then have a realistic employment goal, achievable and attainable. So in terms of eligibility, DRS determines this by how the student's disability or reason why they have an IEP or a 504 plan affects their ability to obtain employment. So they're going to look at these areas: mobility, communication, self-care, self-direction, interpersonal skills, work skills, and work tolerance. So the DRS counselor will look at these areas, and then we'll look at their IEP, psych evaluation, any reports that we provide to them. And what they do is that they determine how, their learning disability, how, their autism, how their ADHD, how their, the reason why they have their IEP, how that affects any of these areas. Not all of them per se, because they're not all affected, but any of them. And then again, the IPE, the Individualized Plan for Employment, is that agreement. It's a legal agreement between the student and their DRS counselor, and it contains the following information: what services are required for that student to be able to get a job, any service providers, funding sources, and time frames for services, and then the progress is reviewed annually. So just like the IEP, the IPE is reviewed annually. However, it can be amended as needed. So we know that young people change their mind all the time. One day they want to be a doctor, the next day they want to be a teacher, the next day they want to be anything else. And that's okay. I mean, even if you think about your own life, maybe when you were 18, you had an idea of what you wanted to do. And you look at yourself now, you're like, yeah, I didn't even, for whatever reason, you didn't continue with that employment goal. So that's fine if they change their mind. That could always be amended. But the most important thing is when they do develop that plan for service providers. So if a student wants to go to college, the IPE has to say what, how DRS is providing assistance. So are they paying for the tuition? Are they paying for the books? And all of that will be included in their IPE. And if your son or daughter has a DRS case and they develop their IPE, ask for a copy of that. I don't know if counselors do the best job at providing the IPE to students. And again, if you don't know, you don't ask for it. But I would say ask, because the services that students receive in school versus the services that a student receives through DRS are very, very different. The school district is set up to provide comprehensive services. So everything is already there. If your child needs physical therapy, if your child needs a social worker, if your child needs nursing services, the school already has it in place, right? You come into the meeting, you sign the paperwork, you agree, and all of the services are there. You don't need to look for your own nurse. You don't need to go out and look for a social worker for your child. The services are there. It's the structure is there. The support is there with case managers and special education teachers and classroom assistants. It's all there. Adult services don't work that way. Everything is based on whether you're eligible or not. And, you know, the support and the structure that the school provides is not there with DRS. You know, DRS will not require, but will expect that the student seek services, asks questions, advocates, self-advocates, and asks for the help and the support that they need. So a lot of times what I notice is that as parents, sometimes we become passive participants of services, right? We don't really seek out anything because it's all there. And then there's a big shift when our students leave high school and move on to adult services. You know, we expect the same treatment, the same service, and that doesn't happen. So we want to make sure that you know that and that students know that, so then they can learn to have the self-determination and the self-advocacy skills that they need to get the services that are required for them to be successful in education, employment, and independent living. So we talk about who is a good candidate for DRS. So any student with an IEP or a 504 plan really meets the eligibility criteria for services. So referring students to DRS is a critical component of their transition planning process. And again, referring students to DRS while they're in high school will increase their ability to take advantage of services after graduation. If we wait until that student graduates and give them the number and say, oh, here's a service, call them and they'll help you, that may or may not happen. They may or may not understand what to do, or they may just see that and not do it, right? So when identifying students to be referred to DRS, we ask that you consider the following. We definitely want students who are interested, motivated, and can engage in competitive employment for at least 10 hours a week in an integrated setting. This means that to me, the most important thing is that they want to work, that they want to learn how to get a job. Even if they do require some support, that they eventually will be able to work independently in a competitive setting. Competitive setting means anywhere that anybody can get a job. Target, Walmart, Starbucks, Jewel, Mariano's, anywhere. Any student that has a barrier that limits their ability to obtain competitive employment. Honestly, this applies to almost any student. I have an 18-year-old that recently found a job and it took her a while to do that, you know? So it's not easy. So basically any student. We also want students that have realistic post-secondary employment goals. You know, that can say, this is what I want to do. I have an idea. I like working with people. I like working with animals. I would love to work in this field or that. Students who need assistance in paying for college or post-secondary training program. Again, this one will apply just to anybody with or without a disability. Students that have a social or valid social security number, and students who are at least 14 and a half years old, because that's when transition services begin here in Illinois. We also want to highlight what happens after a student exits or graduates high school, because this is where that shift happens. So a student, again, remember I said earlier, we have specific counselors that work only with high school. So they come to the school, they meet the student at their school. The student does not need to go anywhere but be at their own school to meet with the counselor. After they graduate high school, that doesn't happen. Their case will be transferred to what we call an adult counselor, so somebody who doesn't work with students, basically. So a counselor, and then it is the student's responsibility to then go and meet with the DRS counselor at their office. They're not going to come to meet with them at at their house or anywhere they could be, it is the student's responsibility to meet them at their office. And then the counselor is assigned no longer by school, but by residential zip code. So depending on where the student lives, that's where they'll get their counselor assigned. So the customer will be contacted by that adult counselor via mail or phone to discuss services after they graduate. So this is important. We hear this all the time. The counselors, the DRS counselors, are unable to contact students. And that's why they have to close cases. So they close a lot of cases after graduation, more than I would like. And this is what we hear from DRS. We couldn't contact the student. We tried, we made attempts, we couldn't contact them via phone or mail. I find that a little hard to believe because I often contact students after they graduate high school. And I would say 95% of the time, I get a hold of them, whether it's via their email or a phone, a text, or calling their parents. I get a hold of them. So that's what they claim. We want to make sure that, the phones are up to date. If you moved, you let us know so we can update the information. And then if they do get in contact with the student, they will be meeting with that adult counselor and then to amend that IPE because, maybe the goal for employment changed. And this is when we want that student to be able to communicate to their counselor if they intend on going to college. We want them to be able to impress his or her goals related to education or employment. And in terms of self-advocacy, again, it is crucial that students learn how to self-advocate and develop self-determination skills, right? We want them to be able to say to that counselor, this is the job I want, this is where I want to go to school. And then we also encourage students to compile a folder. So by the time they leave high school, they have a copy of their last IEP, their last psych eval, their last 504 plan, if that applies, any related service reports, college documents, and to keep that all because DRS is going to want to see or get copies of those documents. For those students that want to go to college, again, customers seeking financial support from DRS will need to provide the following documents. DRS is going to want to see a proof of any award or denial letter from financial aid. If they did receive an award, they want to, they want to know the amount because that's how DRS will determine how much funding they can provide to that student. And then letters of acceptance from college or university. DRS will be able to assist with the purchase of books, supplies, and any material required for students necessary to complete their program. They can also help to pay for medical health insurance coverage if it is offered and required by that college or university. DRS can also help pay for support services such as a note taker, an attendant, a reader, or a sign language interpreter if that is something that the student requires. They can even contribute up to $25 per term, although $25 may be more right now. This is information might be dated for any consumable supplies like paper, pencils, notebooks, things like that. So DRS is able to provide quite a bit of financial support to students. We're going to give you some success stories that of students that we have worked with personally that we know received financial assistance from DRS. So this is a breakdown of the contribution that DRS can provide to students. Those students that are seeking to attend four-year college or university, DRS is able to provide up to $13,000 for a year, 2 semesters. So up to, some students will get $8,000, some students will get $1,000. It all depends on the family income, annual income, and then the amount of people in the family. So just like financial aid, you know how financial aid looks at family income, DRS will do the same thing. And then they also take into consideration any financial aid that the student receives, any scholarships, any grants. So they look at all of that, and then they usually, whatever is left over, a lot of times they come and pick up that bill. So it'll be about up to $6,000 per semester, up to $450 per credit hour. Now we also have students that may not be interested in going to four-year college, but maybe want to do a non-degree, like a commercial driver's license. If they want to be like a truck driver, we have a lot of students who are interested, maybe who want to do a trade, cosmetology, barber school. DRS is able to provide up to $5,000 per year or up to $2,500 per semester. So this is just for the tuition. This does not include books, fees, supplies. That's an additional support that DRS can do. So the DRS financial contribution will be based on the total cost of attendance at an Illinois in-district community college or university, unless a training can be obtained at a lower cost. So that there's students that want to go out of state, and that's okay, but they will only give up to the Illinois in-district community college or university. So they get more money if they stay in Illinois, but if a student chooses to go outside of the state, that's fine too. They'll just get less money. We have one of our success stories of a student that went out of state, and they were able to support him too. DRS also has something called the Illinois Community College Initiative. So this initiative is intended to increase the enrollment of people with disabilities in academic programs in Illinois community colleges. They are able to pay for students to attend any of the city colleges of Chicago without looking at parent income. So they will give them up to 3 years to complete an associate's degree. And the funds can be used only for classes or courses that lead to a degree, a certificate, or other industry recognized credentials. So if we have students that want to go to community college, and if they have an IEP or a 504 plan, DRS can potentially pay for everything. So as you know, community colleges provide a wide range of courses leading to associate's degree and vocational certificates that increase the likelihood of obtaining employment and enhancing self-sufficiency. So this Illinois Community College Initiative is used the least in the city. So, you know, DRS is a state program, right? We have DRS offices all over the state. And Chicago being, or this area, Region 1, but that includes Chicago and Cook County, which is the most populous area in the state, uses the least amount of funding for college. Other areas, suburbs and down south, they use this more. They get more money for their students than we do here in Chicago. So they do have funding. We just need to make sure that our students get connected and get these services because they're available. So some of the success stories that we work with a student who had a 504 plan. She ended up going to a Rupert College of Loyola, and DRS was able to give her $3,500 for her tuition and books because she had received a scholarship and was receiving financial aid. We also have another student that graduated from Senn High School with an IEP. I believe he had autism. He's currently attending the College of Architecture and Design at UIC, and DRS was able to provide almost $9,000 for his tuition and fees, with an additional $750 for books and supplies. And then he received additional funding from some of the supplies that he needed, software and some memory card and a MacBook. They didn't pay for everything, but they provided him with assistance to pay for some of these products or some of these material. And then we also have we had a student from one of the Noble School Chicago Bulls that ended up going to the University of Arizona, and he played a sport, so he was able to get a scholarship, but DRS came in to help him pay for his housing and meals because he had everything else was covered for him. DRS was able to pay for this. And they can even help with like transportation. You know, when the student is coming back to town, they can help to pay for some of that. So again, we just want to make sure that students get connected so they can receive much of these services. So that pretty much wraps up our presentation today. I think we still have a few minutes for any questions that that people may have?
A lot of the questions in the chat were about, like, you know, college funding, financial support and stuff. I think that we covered it all. Is anyone got more questions about that, out-of-state funding, or how DRS determines how much they will provide their student? Or was that pretty well answered?
And I know I covered a lot of information in very little time, and I think I ran through some of these slides, but I'm going to put up our emails again in case you guys want to just contact us directly. We are more than happy to, you know, meet with you, answer your questions, or if you're not sure, does my child have a case with DRS already? I thought we filled out a packet. I'm not sure. We can let you know. So, you know, get our obviously our phone numbers, not now because we're not working from the office, but we're definitely available via email. So you can just send us an email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But I hope that you were, you know, able to learn something new today that can assist your students.
And I put a link in the chat to the ODLSS transition website, the DRS page, which has the links to the DocuSign referral, which can be filled out. You know, if you're a parent and you want to sign your student up for DRS, you can click the referral that's for parent, and you can do that all online. And then you can obviously follow up with Carolina and myself to make sure that that's completed. And there is some other supporting documentation on there that can break down, you know, the DRS services a little more. So just another thing for you to take a look at.
And just basically want to thank you for joining us today. You know, thank you for being here. And again, we're here for you if you have any questions or concerns.
Can I ask a question? What I want to make sure I understand is that if our students want to continue, it's up to them to make sure you have a good contact information for them beyond Jones. Or
exactly.
Beyond high school. So,
yeah. Exactly. So when they fill out that DRS referral, we often ask for them to try to put a personal email address in there instead of a CPS email, obviously, because that'll expire, you know, their cell phone. You know, it is an adult service, so it's going to be expected that they are following up with their DRS counselor. You know, if they get an email, they're going to respond to set up a meeting with that counselor, all of those sort of things. So yeah, very important that they have ample means to reach that student after they've completed the referral.
Yeah, I actually think my son has had his meeting.
Okay.
If that's possible.
I think it's just good to be aware, you know, once he graduates, that his DRS case will be transferred to the zip code, the office that's associated with where you live, instead of the zip code that is what Jones is.
Right.
So you will get an email, you will get a letter that will tell you that. So just make sure that he follows up, and, you know, you're aware of what services DRS can offer. He's aware, so he can advocate for those services.
It's phenomenal. You guys are amazing.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Yes. My daughter's a freshman this year. Is it too soon to start?
Is she over 14 and a half?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
At
she's
14 and a half, that's when transition services can begin in Illinois, so they can be referred, and then they're referred only once every year. They have the same counselor, they just update that IEP, and they just have to do it once. I think it's even better because they get to know their counselor more and understand the services and what to expect after high school.
Okay, thank you.
And just so you guys know, like Carolina said, DRS can potentially help students with an undergraduate degree, a master's degree, then finding a job with that master's degree. So it's something that, you know, if, like Carolina said, they forget about it and they graduate, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait, I heard about DRS. They can go online and fill out an adult application. That service is still available to them. So they can work with DRS until they're 64 or 65, I think.
Till retirement age.